It was a cold October evening, just a year ago, when the events that still haunt me unfolded. My name is Harry, and I was a senior at St. Mary's High School, a sprawling old institution on the outskirts of our small town. The school was ancient, with ivy-covered walls and a reputation for being a little eerie after dark. Final exams were looming, and like most students, I was buried in books, desperate to cram as much as possible. The school library, usually closed by 6 p.m., had extended its hours to midnight to accommodate us. Since my house was a short walk away, I preferred the library's quiet atmosphere over the distractions at home. That evening, I left home around 5:30 p.m., my backpack heavy with textbooks and notes. The air was crisp, and the streets were bathed in the orange glow of streetlights. I reached the library by 6 and settled into my usual spot near the back, close to the towering shelves of old books. The library was a cavernous room with high ceilings, creaky wooden floors, and rows of dusty tomes that seemed to hold secrets of their own. A few other students were scattered around, their heads bowed over books, the only sounds the rustle of pages and the occasional cough. I dove into my studies, losing track of time as I worked through math problems and history notes. It wasn't until I glanced at my phone that I realized it was nearly 11 p.m. The library was eerily quiet now, the other students had left, and even the librarian, Mrs. Gupta, seemed to have retreated to her office. I had just a few more pages to review, so I decided to finish up and head home. The silence was almost oppressive, broken only by the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. As I scribbled notes, I heard a sound, a soft, deliberate thud, like a book falling from a shelf. I froze, my pen hovering over the paper. The library was supposed to be empty, but the sound came again, this time accompanied by a faint rustling, like someone dragging their feet across the floor. I stood up, my heart thudding, and peered down the aisle. The shelves loomed like silent sentinels, casting long shadows in the dim light. "Hello?" I called softly, my voice sounding small in the vast room. No response. I told myself it was nothing, maybe a book had slipped or a mouse was scurrying around. I sat back down, trying to focus, but the air felt heavier now, charged with an unease I couldn't shake. Then, I heard it again, closer this time, a slow, uneven shuffle, like someone limping through the aisles. My pulse quickened. I grabbed my bag, deciding it was time to leave, when a whisper cut through the silence. "Have you seen her?" The voice was low, raspy, and unmistakably female. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, echoing faintly off the walls. I spun around, my eyes darting between the shelves, but saw no one. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice trembling. No answer, just the oppressive silence pressing in on me. I slung my bag over my shoulder and hurried toward the exit, my footsteps echoing on the wooden floor. The library opened into a long, dimly lit corridor that led to the school's main entrance. The corridor was lined with old lockers and faded posters, the kind of place that felt abandoned even during the day. As I walked, the limping sound followed me, faint but persistent, like it was keeping pace. I quickened my steps, my breath coming in short gasps. At the end of the corridor, where it turned right toward the exit, I stopped dead. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the faint glow of the exit sign. It was a woman, her outline indistinct but unmistakably human. She was tall, her posture slightly hunched, and her head was tilted at an odd angle, as if she were listening for something. I couldn't make out her face, but her presence sent a chill down my spine. "Who are you?" I called, my voice cracking. She didn't move, didn't speak, but the air grew colder, and I felt an overwhelming urge to run. I took a step back, and in an instant, she was gone. The corridor was empty, the exit sign casting its green glow over nothing but air. My heart pounded as I hurried toward the door, pushing it open and stumbling into the night. The cold air hit me like a slap, but it was a relief to be out of that stifling corridor. The street outside was deserted, which was unusual for our town. Even at this hour, there were usually people around, late-night joggers, dog walkers, or kids hanging out. But tonight, the silence was absolute, broken only by the distant hum of a car. I started walking home, my house just a 10-minute walk away. The streetlights cast long shadows, and I kept my eyes on the ground, trying to shake the image of that woman from my mind. My stomach growled, and exhaustion weighed on me, making each step feel heavier than the last. I was halfway home when I noticed it, a shadow stretching across the pavement, moving in sync with my steps. It wasn't mine. It was too long, too thin, and it seemed to flicker, like a flame caught in a breeze. I stopped, my breath catching in my throat, and looked up. There, just ahead, was the woman. She was walking slowly, her movements jerky and unnatural, like a puppet with tangled strings. Her clothes were ragged, hanging off her frame in tatters, and her hair was a wild mess, spilling over her shoulders. Her hands and feet were twisted at odd angles, as if broken and never healed right. She hadn't noticed me yet, but I could feel the weight of her presence, like a storm cloud gathering overhead. I stood frozen, my instincts screaming at me to turn back, to find another way home. But there was no other way, my house was straight ahead, and the streets around were just as empty. I took a cautious step, then another, hoping to slip past her unnoticed. But as I drew closer, she stopped. Her head turned slowly, unnaturally, until she was facing me. Her face was pale, almost translucent, with dark hollows where her eyes should have been. Her lips parted, and that same raspy voice whispered, "Have you seen her?" I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My mind raced, trying to process what I was seeing. She took a step toward me, her limp more pronounced now, her twisted foot dragging across the pavement. "She's lost," she said, her voice carrying a grief so raw it made my chest ache. "My girl. Have you seen her?" I shook my head, my mouth dry. I don't know," I stammered, pointing vaguely down the street. Maybe that way?" It was a desperate attempt to get her to leave, to put distance between us. She stared at me for a moment, her head tilting further, and then she turned and limped in the direction I pointed. I watched, heart pounding, as she moved further and further away, her figure growing smaller until she vanished into the darkness. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The fear that she might return, that she might appear again, drove me to run. I sprinted toward home, my legs burning, my breath ragged. The streets remained empty, the silence deafening. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see her shadow stretching toward me again. When I finally reached my house, I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the door open. I stumbled inside, locking the door behind me, and collapsed against it, gasping for air. I don't know how long I sat there, trying to make sense of what had happened. The image of that woman, her twisted limbs, her hollow eyes, her desperate question, burned into my mind. I didn't sleep that night, too afraid to close my eyes. The next morning, I told my friend Samir about it, expecting him to laugh it off. Instead, his face went pale. "You saw her?" he whispered. "The woman from the school?" He told me the story then, one I'd never heard despite growing up in this town. In 1985, a woman named Leela had lived near St. Mary's. She was a single mother, devoted to her 8-year-old daughter, Mira. Mira was a student at the school, a bright, cheerful girl who loved playing in the school courtyard. One evening, during a school event, Mira had wandered off to play near the old oak tree by the library. No one knew exactly what happened, but she fell from the tree and died from her injuries. Leela was devastated, consumed by grief. She was seen wandering the school grounds at night, calling for Mira, refusing to believe she was gone. Eventually, Leela disappeared, and no one knew what became of her. But the stories started soon after, sightings of a woman in tattered clothes, limping through the school or the streets nearby, always asking the same question, "Have you seen her?" I didn't know what to make of it. Part of me wanted to believe it was just a story, a legend kids told to scare each other. But I'd seen her, felt the weight of her grief, heard the desperation in her voice. For weeks after, I avoided the library, sticking to studying at home. But the unease lingered. Every time I walked home at night, I kept my eyes on the ground, afraid to see that shadow again. One night, about a month later, I had to stay late at school for a group project. It was past 10 p.m. when we finished, and I had no choice but to take the same route home. The streets were quiet, but not as empty as that night. I walked quickly, my headphones on, trying to drown out my nerves with music. As I passed the school, I heard it, a faint, raspy whisper, carried on the wind. "Have you seen her?" I froze, my blood running cold. I didn't look up, didn't turn around. I just ran, faster than I ever had, until I was safe inside my house. I never saw her again, but sometimes, late at night, I hear that whisper in my dreams, and I wonder if Leela is still out there, searching for her lost daughter, forever trapped in her grief. I hope you enjoyed this chilling tale. If you want to hear more creepy stories, let me know. Stay safe out there, especially after dark.